So last week I looked at a brand new, almost brand new F-150. Looking at mostly design things, and well, I got to thinking maybe looking at this truck in exclusion just by itself is not fair to it. Maybe we're doing it a disservice. Well, here I have a Ram. Now this is the classic, so it's a little slightly older design even than the current Ram. But let's take a look at it just for comparison's sake, and let's see what's going on here. Well, it's me from the future, and you'll notice the truck is gone. It's been replaced with a Nissan Versa. Well, things happened. I had this whole video all shot and ready to go, and well, had to go back and make some changes because issues happened with the truck. I had the dash cam running. I'll show you that later on in the video, but I mean, let's just, get into the truck and we'll get to that later. Now, lest this turn into a truck review channel, I'm going to focus on design and things like that. Just, all of this is relative to older trucks because, that's what basically my, base of my channel is, because that's kind of what I do. Newer trucks are kind of a aberration on my channel, and, this is purely for the sake of comparison. So this is the Ram Classic. This is the slightly older design. I think they're discontinuing it this year. Not sure what year exactly this truck is. It is a, let's see if we can find the door sticker. It is a, 2022. So it's only 1 year older than the F-150 we took a look at. Same deal, towing package, but it does have true towing mirrors on it, which the F-150 did not. And as we'll see, it's a huge advantage. So this has 17-inch wheels on it, not those ridiculous 22s. These are still a little large. I would like 16s, but this is still acceptable for a truck wheel and tire in today's age. It kind of has the same aerodynamics as the F-150 on the front with the lower plastic valance. You can believe this one is relatively removable because it's got a steel bumper instead of the plastic F-150 bumper, so you can just rip that off if you don't like it, decrease your fuel mileage a little bit. Styling, still good. I like it. It holds up well. Modern styling. Just your standard. It's, the F-150 had a capless fuel system. I didn't show it, but, that's just one little thing. No reason to pay for that. I can take a fuel cap off. Still has a backup camera. This actually has a tailgate handle, which I appreciate. It doesn't have bells and whistles to lower your tailgate for you, but that's fine. I'm good with that. It's got a mechanical handle, and that's okay. I criticized the F-150 for being able to see light and having that crack along the sides of the bed. If you look at this bed, it's nice and swooped up. This is a one-piece bed insert shell, except for the front, but very good. It doesn't have a bed outlet because, again, it's an older design, but you don't really need that. Get a generator, is what I'm saying. Just an extra bell and whistle you're paying for, you don't necessarily need. This one, I have the same beef with the rear window. The glass is way bigger by comparison just for looks because the seat sticks up to here and the roof comes down to, I don't know, somewhere in here, and the pillar comes in the side, and then you got the headrest. That's a modern truck thing. The B and C pillars are not quite as bulbous in this thing. They're actually more acceptable when you're driving. It's easier to see. I do appreciate that. It still has the stick antenna. I criticized the Ford for going with a modern design and then shoving a stick antenna on it, but this is an older design, so that's perfectly acceptable by comparison. I mean I have no problem with the stick antenna, but if you're a design person, that's what you're looking at. So running boards, these are a little bit better than the F-150 because you don't get junk caught in here. The F-150 kind of went under. They were deeper. I don't know if these are factory or not. Just a little thing. Let's take a step inside of it. So this interior, even though it's supposedly older, hands down tremendously better. The steering wheel, I complained about the Ford steering wheel because it was so bulbous. Although this one's a little bigger than, maybe an older fashioned steering wheel, this is a perfectly acceptable size for a steering wheel. It's perfectly comfortable. There's no extra buttons on here. There's no buttons you don't need. And I wish Ford would have done this. The gear plus and minus are on the wheel. And of course, you don't have this ridiculous fold down shifter like the Ford had. Just a shifter dial here, which is perfectly fine in today's world. And your 4-wheel drive is right below it. One thing I like about the controls in this is it feels like it was designed by a real person, not like an AI or something. If you look over here, you can see the headlight switch. Bang, there it is. Right in your line of vision, easy to see. And I like the way they did this here. It's much better. Ford did like off and then headlights and then, or parking lights and then auto and then headlights. It's really weird. Just stick the auto up first and then the off section and then parking and then headlights. It's more natural progression. It's naturally linear. Ford was weird. It's not natural to turn the wheel into those settings like they had it. Just take my word for it. The screen is much better. I didn't complain, well, it was a complaint. I complained about the Ford gauge cluster. I was saying, you got some analog, some digital, just commit one way or the other. Well, Dodge committed. All analog gauges, that's perfectly fine. One thing I wanted to note about the gauge cluster after driving it was I couldn't shoot it because I really only got into that after the truck was gone. Anyway, it feels like the gauge cluster was kind of designed by two different designers slash engineers that never talked or never met each other. The needles sweep on the gauge, but the indicator for each gauge, whether it's oil or coolant temperature, is behind the needle most of the time, because most of your gauges are in the middle. And they put the symbol right behind the middle, so most of the time it's covered up. And it takes a while to get used to. Once you figure out what your gauges are, that's fine. But you just hop in the truck and look at the cluster. It's a poor design. And since most of this video is about design and not the actual truck failing and all the mechanical stuff, I just figured I'd throw that in there as a side note. You can flip through some options, your trip and everything. They always have the gas efficiency displayed here, which is basically a vacuum gauge, but they always have it displayed there. Just small and out of the way, but highly visible. It's a good design. They don't have a huge, big, bulbous screen here to get in the way. These controls are very... You can almost look at them for just a second or two and figure out what you want to do. It's very clear that these are the HVAC controls and these are the radio controls and then screen in the middle. It's tremendously clear. The Ford, you got to almost stare at the screen, or you almost got to stare at these controls for a couple minutes until you figure out what controls are what. It's not intuitive at all. This one, it does have an onboard power converter. It just doesn't supply it to the bed. So that's fine. That's good. I like that design. It's got DC power down here. That's fine. You don't need anything special. It's got a phone holder here, which is really nice. You can put your phone here. In the Ford, I was sticking it all kinds of places, and even the shifter hole where you're not supposed to have to stick anything. But here, it's got a nice rubber clip. Beautiful. That is great design. There's not extra holes to catch things. Ford had just had weird holes everywhere. Not too many pockets. And this has the nice fold-up thing under here for just some paperwork and some USB chargers in there. You can charge your phone, stick it out of the way. It's got the coin slots, which I'm old-fashioned. I still use coins. I like that. And then it has the secondary thing here, which, again, you don't have to reach down 3 feet to get into your console. This is nice. It's not too big. And there's not a lot of wasted space in there that can catch too much junk. This is good. Glove compartment, small like the Ford with an upper glove compartment. I don't know, this must be a new vehicle thing, but it doesn't have like a separate button for this thing. It's nothing fancy to break. It's just an extra mechanical switch there that's right on the door. Lots of door pockets, that's good. Not overly sized. We got some dedicated cup holders here. It's already catching junk, that's fine. One reason I don't like a lot of pockets and things is they just catch junk. Very simple door controls within your reach. The ergonomics on this are great. I said on the other Ford, the door was like designed outward too far. But here, I mean, this fits my arm just perfect. And of course you can actually hold the wheel because it doesn't have a huge thing here full of extra buttons. And if I want to rest my arm up here, this isn't the perfect spot too. Again, that's probably something just for me, but I criticized the Ford for having too much texture on this handle. They did good on the inside here. It's very smooth and easy to clean, but on the outside, and you can see it, this is what happens over time. It just starts to collect stains and junk, and it's hard to clean off. Or as you can see on the inside, it's a little bit better. I mean, not tremendously better, but a little bit. But you can see what happens over time. That's a good reason not to have that. There's not 1,000 pieces on this dashboard that are gonna creak and crack over time and start to create issues. This is just one piece. Well, two pieces if you count. I think it's 2 pieces. This is one. This is anyway. It's a lot less pieces. The Ford was like 1,000 pieces of plastic that are going to start to have broken clips and crack and break over time and creak and rattle. This is nice, and there's not 1,000 different textures that are tremendously hard to clean. They did put a little bit of a fake vinyl texture on here, but this is acceptable because a lot of trucks have this. But it's one piece, and that's the big thing. But this is okay to clean. It's not as impossible as some of the textures that were on the Ford. Key roll here in a nice accessible spot. The fob is not huge, I'll show you that. Everything is nice and easy to get to. It's comfortable. I like that they put this armrest forward more. The Ford was kind of cut off back here-ish, so you didn't have as much up here, but this is nice. This is a tremendously comfortable truck. Tremendously comfortable. There's nothing up here that doesn't need to be. This is for the back window, I think. I'll test that out. I have the key in here, but very, very smooth, comfortable. Nice interior. And I know this is supposedly a slightly older interior by comparison, but in my mind, this is a much better designed interior, much more ergonomic and much more better for longevity and you know, wear and tear in a work truck. So the key fob on this, normal and acceptable size. The main difference is this isn't a completely keyless. You still have to stick this into the ignition on the vehicle. So it still does have a removable key that pulls out of here, but it doesn't have a lot of unnecessary bulk to it. So let's take a look at some of the actual electronics on this now that I have the key. So the Ford cluster I was critical of because it was relatively useless, and it was like trying to pretend that it had lots of features and technology. This doesn't pretend. It's just a square screen. It's got the fuel efficiency always there in the corner. You know, typical analog gauges. It's got a few lights up at the top, clearly marked, that you know where they are. Everything clearly marked. It's just got your transmission down here, and then the rest of the screen is dedicated to different features that you can pull up while you're driving, like fuel levels. It does have a fuel gauge over here, but I don't know why it has a separate tanks there. I don't think this has 2 tanks. But if it did, tire pressures, things like that. You can put a digital speedometer up there, which is quite nice. You can have an audio screen. You can have your trailer brake here. This has the built-in trailer brake. And when I press the manual here, you can get a feedback. The Ford didn't have that. I think it was like up here or something. Anyway, I don't know. Not too important, but I do like the integrated trailer brake. This does have a tow haul switch. The other one, the Ford had like a mode switch for different terrain and tow haul modes and sport mode, and which again, the Ford dedicated a whole switch to that when they could have just done that through, you know, the steering wheel. This is a very simple and well-designed steering wheel controls. There's not extra buttons there that don't need to be. You have 4 direction buttons. You have your cruise control. You have gear controls for the transmission, and of course your wireless phone controls, which don't need to be there, but they are nice if you use your phone a lot in the truck. And you know, as a work truck, you know, you're probably on the phone somewhat in your truck when you're working, driving to jobs and stuff. And so that is actually I don't approve of most technology, but that is a feature that I approve of because it makes it easier to drive hands-free and safer, and safety is a big thing. So you also have your standard engine lights here, like, you know, your actual engine code light and ABS, and your tow haul mode, which is on off. I think I can turn that on, tow haul light comes on. Anyway, standard engine lights, they're not all completely in your digital cluster like the Ford is, and you can access them all the time, which is important. Going through here, and then you have your trip and odometer features and fuel mileage, and you can pull that up while you're driving. I especially like this big digital speedometer, and you can get, you know, odometer and everything else there. It's just nice because it's right in front of your eyeballs. The Ford was kind of offset always to the bottom corner. This is just more natural for your eyes. It's a better design. So you can pull up this big fuel economy gauge, which is just a bigger version of this one down here. Not necessary, but you know, it's there. Tire pressure. You can get your trans temp up here. The Ford had a permanent trans temp, but not really necessary. And You don't need it all the time, but at least you can access it here. You can pull up the individual gauges, and this is important, with real numbers on them. You can see the actual numbers. There's no way to do this on the Fords. You can see that the oil temp is at 170, the oil life is at 68%. You can get all of these on one screen. Here's your engine hours, just like on the Ford, idle, driving, and total. You can get your idle hours in there. That's important on a work truck because you don't know how long it's been idled for. Easy to change from mile per hour to kilometer per hour on here. Metric to imperial. Not that that's necessary, but if you drive into Canada, you might like that. Now over here, as you're switching through, I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually switching through and telling you which screen you're on. And it's you know, it's got an up or down slide, which doesn't sound useful. You have the next ones up there, but when you're looking at it, it's a more intuitive interface than the Ford. It's these tiny little things that can make an interface more intuitive. And you don't think it makes a big difference, but it does. Now here, you can actually get mileage with your trailer connected, which is a really nice feature because if you're billing somebody for miles of hauling versus miles not hauling a trailer, this can give you the difference really quick without having to do all kinds of calculations. I know for a normal person, they're going to go, well, we don't care about that. But these are all nice little things that you can get that Ford didn't take into account. And if they did, the few things they did, they're not as easy to access. It's not as intuitive. This is a much, much, much better system. And you're going to say, well, this is an older system. This was designed in 2009, and you'd be correct. And in the last video, I said some of these things about some older trucks, the design features are better, and they've gone backwards. I don't know about the new Rams, but for Ford, I mean, they're looking at a design from 2009. I mean, they all look at each other. All of the automakers, they're always comparing what the other manufacturers are doing, and they really should have looked at this. And if they did, and then they made that interface in the F-150, shame on them. But there's all kinds of good stuff in here. Anyway, like I was saying, with the gauges, you can get actual numbers on these gauges. And people don't realize how important that is until you get into something like the Ford that has no numbers. It just has a, oh, it's in the middle of the, it's in the middle of the gauge. Well, what's that mean? Well, that's important to track over time if you're actually using your truck as a work truck and not, you know, just some kind of car that, you know, you're not hauling things in the bed or hauling weight. But this is a tremendously wonderful design feature, and I highly applaud Dodge for this. So you can get them all on one screen: oil pressure, oil temp, trans temp, coolant temp, with real numbers. I'm curious what kind of oil pressure this runs after 40,000 miles. We are up to 38 psi at idle. That's not bad for a truck with 40,000 miles on it. But this is really handy. So there's kind of a matrix the way this is organized, and it's interesting that I can tell this after a couple seconds of using this versus the Ford that I still can't tell exactly how they designed it. With this one, there's up, down in the menu, and there's side to side. So you can go up and down through major functions with these switches, and then each individual major function will have minor break-offs that you can go side to side. For instance, like the here we go. Like the trailer towing, we're in the trailer towing section now. Now if I go sideways within this, you can go distance with trailer connected and trailer brake, you know, your actual trailer brake interface here. And you know, all the individual all the individual trailer things are going to be in this trailer sub menu that goes sideways. And this is a really intuitive, I've said it before, and I'll say it again because I can't say it enough. This is a tremendously intuitive, wonderful design. And this is the way all of these screens should kind of be organized in this fashion. I mean, there's no industry standard, but what I'm saying is there really should be an industry standard because it would be a lot easier to get into a vehicle and just, you know where to find things. But anyway, this would be probably one of the candidates for a good model for a standard that I would go with if I was that kind of, organizing person. So this screen over here, very nice. You have your radio and your nav and everything all just combined in this standard nice little screen. And when you put it in reverse, it comes up with the reverse camera. Nothing too fancy. It doesn't have to be high resolution. It's just a normal screen like this. It's not horrifically expensive like the one in the Ford. And of course you can get your individual menus down here. It's a more intuitive touchscreen than the Ford, in my opinion. Actually, it seems to be more responsive. When you press something, it actually highlights it on the screen with the circle, so you can know that you hit it. Whereas the Ford, you hit it and there's nothing to indicate that you hit it. Obviously it's hard to do haptic feedback on something like this, but a visual feedback is a good substitute, and they did well on this. Everything in this truck is well designed. I can't say it enough. And I know it's a 2009 design and everything, but this is an older design. I just can't get over how much better it is than the Ford that's practically brand new by comparison. You know, you're looking at a 2009 design versus 2022, and I mean, Ford should just be ashamed of themselves from a design standpoint on this. And I'm looking at this door, and again, from a work truck standpoint, this is great because it's not 1,000 pieces. You know, you have this main piece here and this piece. Again, easy clean. This vinyl surface, it's not too deep of a crosshatch on here, not too deep of a texture. Easy to clean. And it's not, you know, it's not too many pieces or anything. They're going to start to rattle and clang and bang around over time and fall apart and not age well. And for 40,000 miles, this thing is tremendously solid. Also, I can actually manually pull these up. On the Ford, they went down even with the top of the thing. I didn't mention that, but it's kind of annoying. There was no way to override. If you locked the Ford and your locks went out, you could only open the driver door with a key, but if you wanted to let somebody else in, there'd be no way to do it, because you couldn't just reach back to the rear door and pull up the lock pin like you can on this. These are little things that car designers need to focus more on, because especially as failure rates for these electronic things go up over time, you need a backup. And in the Ford, if the electric locks failed, you would have to fix them. In this, you could use them as manual locks very easily, just like an old-fashioned truck like this. You wouldn't need to fix them, but in the Ford, you definitely would have to. This does have a transmission hump in the back, a drive train hump that the Ford didn't have. I don't care about that. They probably tout that in the F-150 for some reason, and I don't care. Maybe it's easier to slide toolboxes or stuff into the F-150, but I've been dealing with trucks like this for years with humps in them, and quite frankly, it doesn't faze me at all. The Ford had a flat section under the seat. This has a, how does this go up? This has a separate raised compartment, and then it has this, which I guess that's for holding stuff. These are just whiz-bang storage issues that don't really matter. I like the complete flat floor in the F-150 under the seat. If you wanted to, you could add your own option like this. Dodge has just integrated it, but they've always done this since the 02 models. That's just the way it is. But that's fine. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. I do prefer the floor in the F-150. That was a good design choice to not put anything under the seat and let people put their own options there. I wish they would have done that with some other things. Let people, you know, just let things open and let people add on their own work truck options. This has real metal bumpers. I like that. Highly approve of real metal bumpers, not plastic junk. These things age better, and they're also more durable. And when they get dented, they still look better. When plastic gets dented, it just looks like dented plastic. The suspension on this, I believe these are coil springs, which I mean, they've done that since 09 in these half-ton trucks, and they seem to have aged well. Originally, I was skeptical on the coil spring, the rear coil spring design. GM, I think, did that in the 70s on some trucks, but they quickly went away from it. But technology has reached a point where that's acceptable and durable with the materials and options they have available now. The only thing I have against that is I believe there's more sway bars and parts in a coil spring rear. And coil springs obviously don't age as well under load characteristics, but I mean, leaf springs wear out too. This has proved to be quite an acceptable design against my initial assessments years ago. This has two antennas, I just noticed. It has the shark fin and it has the stick antenna. That must be for nav or Sirius or something separate. don't know why they couldn't combine them both into that shark fin. Seems like that would have been much more gooder. This does not have a passenger cylinder, but again, you could still unlock them all if the locks went out just by pulling this button up. Footwell space and foot design. This has a slightly bigger engine, transmission, drivetrain hump than the Ford. They probably could have avoided that by pushing the engine forward. Let's take a look under the hood. Oh, one thing I want to add, this does not have the stupid electronic parking brake. This is a manual lever cable system. Highly approve. All electronic parking brakes should be consigned to the dustbin of history and never put in a car ever again. Lever and cable's the way to go. We have a V6. I wish I could have gotten a V8 compared to the Ford on a more fair basis, but I think power and fuel consumption wise, this is fairly similar from a drive feel. The 5-liter Coyote probably has more power than this, but this feels like it has about the same because the transmission has less gears and all that. So the end result is it feels and drives about the same. Towing, this is probably going to have a little less grunt for towing, but this is a naturally aspirated 3.6 liter V6. There's a ton of room between the front of the truck and the engine. It looks like it would be okay to work on. I don't know the history of these engines. I think this is the infamous Pentastar engine that so many people don't like. I don't have an opinion on that because I've never worked on one. So again, just like the Ford, I can't tell you one way or the other about working on this in the Dodge Ram. But I can tell you the packaging seems to be acceptable, kind of just like the Ford, although in this one, the brake booster is right up against the engine. That's not such a great packaging decision. It makes everything back there really tremendously hard to work on. I think you could work on it a little easier if you took some of these air housings off and things like that, but the Ford, you could work on stuff without having to make exceptions like that. But I can get the front of the engine great. So again, modern trucks, they push them back under the cowl, you know, probably crash considerations and all that, just like I said with the Ford. But washer fluid and washer fluid, coolant, I guess this is where you fill your coolant. And this is the actual radiator. Everything's easy to get to. There's your engine oil, and there's your dipstick. I don't know about the transmission. These days they love to make transmissions non-serviceable, so just like the Ford, I don't see a transmission dipstick. I don't know. You'd have to look for it. Not really part of my review. I'm not doing mechanical stuff here. This is mostly design considerations. As far as the look of the truck and the overall design, this design has held up tremendously well in my opinion. I mean, I like the look of the Ford, but I like the look of this too. It's a good kind of smooth. It's a little bit cleaner than the Ford design. The Ford design has lots of, you know, bulges and indentations that just get in the way. This is a nice smooth curve design that, I don't know, it's kind of ageless. Visibility, I want to just quick go over visibility like I did in the Ford. I have a lot better feel for where the front of this truck is than the Ford. And it's not just because of the hood, where I can see the hood better. I don't know, it's just a general feel. The dashboard doesn't feel as high and built up unnecessarily, and in the Ford, the dash felt like it was really high, and the hood wasn't. It felt weird. That's all best I can describe it. A-pillars, not quite as bulbous. This is a much more acceptable design in my opinion. Visibility isn't tremendously bad. B-pillars, not terrible. As far as passing, if you had to, you have a lot more than a gun slit here than you did on the Ford. You could actually see if you needed to, but you don't, because this has the actual blind spot mirrors that I assume come with the towing package. I assume these aren't the base mirrors. But with the Ford, it had a full towing package on it, so factory towing package, so you'd think it would have had tow mirrors, but it did not. Overall, I'm just from a work truck standpoint, this doesn't have as many electronic bells, whistles, and gizmos, and if I was looking at this truck from a value standpoint, I would say, in my mind, this is closer to a work truck value because you're not paying for all kinds of ridiculous electronic things. This is a much, much better work truck design. There's a lot of things on here that need to be, and not a whole lot that doesn't. So overall, I would give this a pretty high grade. from a, you know, just general design standpoint. Like I said before, not doing any mechanical evaluations on these or how they would hold up mechanically over time. This is mainly for operating the thing on a regular basis. So it was at this point I was about ready to wrap the video up, and well, then a hub on the truck decided to leave the chat while I was driving it. So I had the dash cam running. I'll let you see that. I don't know, the sound quality's bad. I apologize for that, but in general, it'll give you a good idea for what happened. So here's the dash cam footage. Fine, everything is fine. Everything is perfectly fine. Electronic braking system. It's the brake binding. Get a move on, mister.
Do you have emergency brakes?
Emergency brakes, ABS or something. No, we just gotta take.
Just try and get past these things, and then. Nothing wrong, nothing is happening. How's this work exactly? So they came and towed the truck. The wheel bearing, the front driver's side wheel, completely locked up. It was rattling around and things had started to happen, and I guess it got real hot there, and well, once it cooled down, the wheel just completely locked up. And when they went to drive it up onto the tow truck, which was a flatbed, it didn't really want to move. They were just spinning the tires, just trying to shoot that thing up there. Well, they did get it up there, so I'm glad it wasn't my truck. Anyway, there I was, all ready to, you know, calculate the payment for a new truck because, you know, it seemed so nice, and well, no, that didn't happen. So I'm sticking with the old trucks because at 44,000 miles, a wheel hub should not be going out on any relatively new vehicle, rental or not. So that's the story with that. Now I'll return you to the regularly scheduled outro, which I shot before all this. That's just a little bit of a quick run through on the Ram, and you can use this in comparison to the last video of the F-150 I did. And I mean, overall, this thing, especially for a work truck, which is, you know, that's the kind of person I am. When I see a truck, I use them for work, so that's what I rate them on. That's the kind of scale I'm looking at, not whiz-bang gizmos and electronic stuff. This thing wins hands down over the F-150 in almost every respect. And I can't get over, this actually made me even more disappointed in the Ford design. I was already kind of disappointed with it being a new truck and I expected more, but this actually made me even more disappointed. I haven't driven a new Ram or anything in years and years and years. I had a 2002 Ram for comparison years ago, and so, you know, I had little to compare it to, but this is far and away the winner. So anyway, I'm sure, like I said before, you know, no one, as far as buying trucks, no one's going to take my advice if you watch this, because you're just going to go out and do what you want anyway. But I just thought it'd be interesting to throw on the channel, just as a, you know, especially in comparison to old trucks, and especially because I'm someone who mostly drives, 40, 50-year-old vehicles, and I don't focus more on new trucks. So from my perspective, it's kind of interesting because I don't drive a lot of new trucks, and rarely, and certainly don't own any. So that's just where we're going for with this video. Anyway, if you like it, subscribe, leave a comment down below, tell me what you think, and as always, thanks for watching.